Alright, welcome back. Today we're flying from Cairns to Kochi, and you can kind of see it on the map here. We're going to be flying through Darwin, Bali, Christmas Island, Cocos Keeling, Diego Garcia, the Maldives, in that order. So, here we are, back in Cairns. But it looks kind of the same, to be honest. So, it probably wasn't that long between these two videos. Yeah, I'm mixing these videos together because it seems to me that flying over the ocean can get a little boring to watch as well as fly. So, I'm just now noticing in the playback that there were helipads back there, which is pretty sweet. I've flown through Cairns quite a lot in the past, doing traffic patterns in the A320 and other smaller aircraft. So, I never really explored the western side of it, and we're about to go do that, so. Here we are. It's kind of gorgeous, this entire east coast of Australia. It's all mountain from top to bottom. A few minutes later, though, flying, from one horn to the other, you'll inevitably find yourself in the outback. I don't know if this counts as outback yet, but well, yeah, here we are. Trying to find our first stop, to be honest. Getting a little distracted by the ground. It looks gorgeous. It really does. It looks like, I think I've said this in other videos, but it looks like when you take like electrodes to wood to burn out a pattern. That's kind of what it looks like. But invert the colors, I guess. Yeah, I didn't see the runway until right here because of how difficult it is to see everything. So, this is kind of why I fly over the top of airports before I actually enter like a traffic pattern, because if I don't, I'm not going to be understanding at all of where they are. And of course I could do the work ahead of time to kind of figure that out, but there's a lot of flights and a lot of videos to edit. Most of my landings here on this trip are crosswind for one reason or another, and this one was no exception. I did a pretty good job on this one, I think, but not so well on others. Here we are taking off again, and I mean, it's pretty easy to tell why it was difficult to find. I mean, here we are almost above it again, and I can't see it. I couldn't see it at the time. The only reason I knew it was there was because of GPS. So here we are going to be flying from the eastern horn of Australia. I think they're called horns, I don't really know, to the western horn. Stopping in the midway for this island, which when I find the name of it, I will put it on screen. Probably right here. But it's a beautiful island. It's really cool. The airport's on the far side. But most of the terrain looks to be made up of like scorch marks. Maybe not scorch marks. Looks like somebody dragged like a really heavy object across it. Right there. It's kind of crazy. I've never seen terrain like that before. I think during this video I had hiccups. You can see me shaking. Well, there you go, runway on the far side. If I'm remembering correctly, this is where we got fuel. I was always really thankful for those huge lead ups because these runways are not that long. Yeah, you can see the windsock on the left. Yeah, there's fuel. And that's it. That's all the taxiways. So we turned around, we came back, lined up, got fuel, didn't have to worry about lining up properly or anything, which in some of the airports, as you can see in some of the past videos, that wasn't actually an issue. But we're going to try to avoid the fuel with our wing, which, you know, probably is a great idea with ballistics on the end and, you know, flammable objects on the other. But yeah, since we're halfway down the runway, we're gonna get back on the runway, go all the way down to the end, and since we know which direction the wind's coming from, kind of, now we can grab that runway and just scooch. And from here on, the next destination, next point in the destination is Darwin, and it's a pretty straight shot, which is why you see me just turn a little bit and then keep the nose 5 degrees in the air. At this point, though, like the west horn of Australia is not as big as the east horn, so, or at least it doesn't feel as big. So I was starting to look for, I guess, highways, any kind of infrastructure, because Darwin is a, you know, relatively big place. The lead up to it includes like a lot of highways, and yeah, there you can see Darwin's in distance, right above where the mouse is swiggling. But the mouse, I'm trying to find at this point like this helicopter landing zone, heliport, training area kind of thing that I know is over here somewhere. And yeah, trying to figure out which lines are roads, which lines are rivers, and all that as I'm coming in for landing. Darwin, actually, for those of you who don't know, was one of Amelia Earhart's last stops on her flight. I think she took one more landing in Laos? Leh? I don't know. And then disappeared. So Darwin has a really rich aviation history. It was the finish line for a lot of early aviation landings, or early aviation contests. So yeah, we're continuing the tradition of Sydney, I guess, and requesting landings from the tower. And I did this because, you know, I like Darwin. I wanted to take my time to fly around it a little bit, and I also saw that aircraft in the air and felt like maybe I should just let it land too. But it took us out over the water, which, you know, isn't exactly perfect, but gave us this really nice view coming in of the downtown on the right, and the airport straight ahead. So couldn't complain too much. And yeah, here we are at Darwin, coming in for a landing. How'd I do? Not bad. Not bad at all. We did a little bit of ground handoff stuff, I think, and I asked them for taxi to parking. But that was kind of pointless because instead of giving us directions, they just said go to generic aviation parking, which I was kind of confused about, but I found something similar. I think this might have been actual general aviation parking, I'm not sure. Park us off next to these Bravos, and I'm actually going to experiment with the camera a little bit here and jump out and take a look around. I've been calling this the Israeli livery, probably. At least I feel like I have. But it's most definitely American. I mean, the WA at the end says Washington, I'm pretty sure. Or something similar, but yeah, here we are leaving Darwin. It's a shame. If you have a chance, come out here, fly this, fly the whole area, fly to the islands, do some traffic pattern stuff, take a tour of downtown, still in the Israeli livery. And there we are, departing Darwin airspace. Headed for Bali. This flight, I think, was kind of weird. I did this a different day, and I did it at an odd time that I wasn't really used to. And so my first just inclination was to, oh yeah, you can see Australia there in the distance a little bit, which is kind of crazy considering how far away we were from that. But yeah, my first inclination was to fly during the day, but I went to go check live weather, noticed we were flying in at the wrong time, so here we are. Live time, live weather. Night. Surprisingly, it didn't really affect my landings or my flight. Here's one of the first flights. I don't remember where this is, to be honest, but it ended up being a pretty decent landing. The unfortunate part about flying at night at these distances over, ocean is that there's nothing to look at. So, look at that. Great landing. Pretty decent. So yeah, here we are back in the air. You can see a faint bit of it, but I was experimenting at this point with the HMD, the head-mounted display, which gives basically the same HUD information. And then, board in the air at night. It's nothing else to do except play around with the buttons. Look around at the stars. At this point I noticed some of the city lights, and I think at this point on this particular flight we were running out of battery, so I just, instead of continuing to Cook was killing, which was my plan, we just ended up landing in Bali. But you can see another crosswind landing. Which ended up fine, but I did use up a lot more runway. Could have been worse. So here we are, Bali again. During the day this time, though. You'll notice on the map, actually, though, we weren't getting any water on it. Still rocking the desert livery, I guess. Here we are over the water. No water. Confused as hell. And that's a flight path to Coco's Keeling, or to Christmas Island, so I just kind of gave up. I wasn't using the little nav map app to get me around, but man, that makes all the difference. There's a nice view of I'm gonna say Indonesia, but that's probably wrong. As we head to Christmas Island. Now, Christmas Island, it's on my bucket list. Unfortunately, it takes quite a while to get there. I've flown into Christmas Island a couple times in-game. Never been there in real life, obviously, but every single time you get this. Inclement weather. With no idea what to do. So I trusted that the the ceiling of the clouds was high up enough that I would be able to see. If not, we were just gonna have to continue to Coco's Keeling, but we didn't, luckily enough. Probably should have, though, because this whole flight was a bit of a mess. This whole landing and takeoff was a bit of a mess. When I pulled around, I didn't follow my own advice. I didn't actually fly over the top of the island like I should have. Actually came out quite a ways because I had a feeling that we could line up properly, but it was very difficult to do. As you can see, visibility was not great, and there was like a 25 knot crosswind, not at all ideal. But we inched our way closer. The runway's actually on the top. It's like 150 feet up in the air, something like that. Maybe higher than that, I can't remember. Still didn't have little nav maps, still didn't know what the field elevation was. So but I could see it, and that was all that mattered to me in that moment, I guess. But that landing was rough. And every single time I fly into here, it's like this. Like, just odd. You can see the windsock pointing pretty much straight out. Which means, you know, an excessive amount of stuff. Yeah, Christmas Island is famous for the crab migration, among other things. Just had to throw that in there. Here we are taking off. I guess I'm using a completely different F-16 at this point, because it's got the side-mounted, top-mounted fuel tanks. I didn't even bother flying around Christmas Island. I was so frustrated because of the wind. So we just kind of booked it up out of the clouds and then headed to Coco's Keeling. With more ocean flying. This wasn't the longest ocean flight, but it was pretty close to it. I saw those clouds up at Coco's Keeling because, you know, we're on descent. And I started worrying that it was going to be like the exact same situation as Christmas Island, but, you know, we got closer and it ended up pretty okay. Coco's Keeling is Australian owned, I think. I think it might be a military base of some kind, but it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the first time I heard about this was from a YouTube channel, SV Delos, I think, is the name of the channel. They actually, they found a keeling in Coco's Keeling. Moored their ship. And spent the weekend here. If I remember correctly, this is the this is the stop that they all got bitten up at by bugs. So yeah, I did a little bit of flying over the island just to take it all in. I was tired of flying over the ocean once again, so. But eventually, I just gunned it. And headed into the runway. Coco's Keeling is one of those places that I also would love to go to. Yeah, here we go. Another crosswind landing with no hope. At least it's nice looking on the way in. That wasn't that bad, actually. Proud of myself. That windsock, though, obviously showing us how bad it actually is, so. Yeah. We then, fueled up, turned around, and, booked it out of there. Our next destination is, unfortunately, Diego Garcia, which This flight, I believe, is the longest over ocean flight that we had ever done. And I mean, we spent like maybe an hour and a half in the air. So this Cocos Keeling to Diego Garcia ended up being a whole day. It was a whole day affair to go and do this. But I just had to do it in one day, otherwise I wasn't going to be able to do it. Experiment a little bit more with the HMD just to have something to do. But it was so boring, man. I can't stand. I don't know how commercial pilots do it. Flying over oceans at much slower speeds. Like, I was getting tired, man. Hour and a half in the air, just doing nothing. When I finally saw Diego Garcia, I was so disappointed. I had never been here before. So I expected some kind of, tropical island like the Cocos Keeling we had seen, but I forgot that since Diego Garcia is kind of a military installation, that, combine that also with the fact that it's an island in the middle of the ocean, and Bing Maps or whatever isn't going to have, like, very accurate data on it. It ended up looking like this. Just bland, generic island with what definitely looks like, and that was me checking the wind direction, since we didn't have little nav map VR to help us figure out which direction the wind's coming from. And I didn't obviously fly over the rest of the island like I did on Cocos Keeling, because I didn't feel like it. I just took her in. But yeah, this is definitely a military base. You can tell from the fuel tanks, from everything, man. I bet you I can spot which ones are barracks. Yeah, I even closed the map. I was so done with this day. I was just ready to call it. So I did. Just called it right there. Don't even think I parked. Just came to a stop. So here we are the next day, taking off from Diego Garcia. And very, very, very eager to get out of the Indian Ocean. I had actually planned in the past, and I'm sure I've said this in other videos, to head to Mauritius from here. Like Madagascar, that route, and then head into Africa from there, and maybe that would have been fine to do. But I felt like I really, really, really wanted to go see Everest. And the only way to do that is to head directly north to the Maldives and then into Kochi. And, otherwise we would have had to double back much farther north. So, it wasn't worth it to continue on to Mauritius. Otherwise, that would have definitely been the longest flight, guarantee it. So yeah, here we are, landing in Maldives, racing an Airbus. With yet another crosswind landing. I mean, people who fly here, tell me something if you don't mind. Do you do you often find yourself landing in crosswind, or is it just that you the weather information here is wrong? Because it seems like every single place I go in the ocean, I find crosswinds. So yeah, here we are, pulling into the fuel, looking at India Golf Oscar 113, just losing his mind over the fact that we beat it. At this point, though, I started to have... Oh yeah, you can tell also we're not using the desert livery anymore. I started noticing that maybe my nose wheel steering wasn't actually tied into the rudder pedals, and that maybe that was the reason I was having so much trouble on the runway. So I tied it into the joystick, the twist mechanism of the joystick, to try and see if that would work. But I was getting very, 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 very inconsistent results with that. So as soon as I took off, which by the way, this takeoff was so bad, I have decided to leave it out, and that's entirely because of that stupid joystick thing. But anyway, I'm gonna find a solution to it sometime. I even tried tying it to the throttle quadrant and some kind of axis on there, I don't know. But here we are flying into Kochi. I noticed right away that there was a patch of fog over the top of it. Probably haze, actually. Some kind of haze. But unfortunately that means, I should be flying IFR instead of VFR like I'm doing. So we did it anyway. And unlike Christmas Island, I flew almost over the top of it and then used that as a gauge for where I should start turning and how far I was going to be out and how high up I was. So here we are landing at Kochi. I did, however, notice upon entry into final that I was super high up, so I ended up slamming into the runway with a Navy landing and squirming all over the place trying to slow down. I mean, look at that fog. Look at that haze. It's insane. But yeah, that's gonna do it. That's the last bit of ocean flying for a while. At least until I don't know, actually. Maybe the Caribbean? No, it's gonna be way before that. Something in the North Atlantic to get back to North America. At the time of editing this, I'm actually in Greece. So we have all of Nepal, and Pakistan, the Middle East, and all of Africa to edit together before this catches up to where I actually am. So I might just like throw together a bunch of destinations, a bunch of trips like I have, and we'll see where that goes. Thank you for coming along. I hope you enjoyed it.